So the French Revolution, with its cycle of increasingly radical systems and increasingly radical changes, also sparks yet another revolution here in the Americas, and that is the revolution in Haiti. Now, the revolution in Haiti ends up being even more radical than the one in France. Not because the revolution itself spins out of control, but because of the nature of who's fighting who in this revolution. Um, Haiti, which prior to the revolution is known as Saint Dominique, is by far the wealthiest French colony in the Americas with over 4,000 plantations. And the population of the island is over 85% Black, the majority of those being enslaved, but there is also a decently sized free Black population as well. Um, so on the island, the makeup of the island is overwhelmingly Black, but there's also um, a large mulatto population who start out as the leaders of this revolution. There's also a working and middle class white population known as the Petit Blancs, or the little whites. And then you have the plantation owners who are known as the Grand Blancs, the big whites. And obviously, because of the conditions of the colony, there is a long history of tension between not only the social classes, but also between the races in general. The Petit Blancs are demanding more representation from the Grand Blancs. The Grand Blancs are not only trying to keep them down, but they're also trying to maintain their superiority over the mulatto and the Black population. So, into this cauldron of racial and social tension, you now have the French Revolution breaking out in 1789. And as the French Revolution begins to spin more and more radical, the mulatto population and the Petit Blanc population of Saint Dominique began to demand the same rights from the Grand Blancs as people are demanding in France: equality before the law, redistribution of wealth, changing of the tax system, things like this. And in 1791, there is rumors that are circulating around Saint Dominique that the king, Louis XVI, who's still alive at this point, although dealing with this revolution, that the king is planning on sending an army to Saint Dominique to restore the Grand Blancs to their rightful position as masters of the island. And when that news hits Saint Dominique, it essentially sets off a ticking time bomb. And these demands for the abolition of slavery and the demands for equal rights now turn into violent rebellion. Um, so, slave revolts, generally instigated and led by the mulatto population, begin all over the island in 1791. And there is widespread violence. Thousands of white colonists are hung and guillotined. And essentially, the revolution devolves into a racial conflict as much as it is a social conflict. Um, the majority of slaves on the island are freed, not legally, but they free themselves violently. And basically, the Haitian Revolution turns into an armed conflict between three major groups. You have an army of freed slaves under a former slave known as Toussaint Louverture. You have a partially Black, partially mulatto, partially Petit Blanc army that is trying to restrain the slaves. They want equality, but they don't want the Blacks in charge. And then you also have on the other side a minority in the Grand Blancs who control most of the wealth and most of the power on the island, but in terms of sheer numbers, they are vastly, vastly outnumbered. So this revolution and this social and racial conflict rages on for the next 13 years. And finally, in 1804, the army of former slaves, now under the control of Dessalines, because Louverture has been killed by this point, defeats the allied armies of the Grand Blancs, the Petit Blancs, and the Mulattoes. And they declare Haiti there. They declare Saint Dominique independent. They rename it as Haiti, and they form a independent republic. Um, Now, throughout the course of this, the society of the island is completely reshaped. Plantations are burned. The land is seized by the slave army and it's redistributed to the former slaves. Universal male suffrage is declared, meaning that slavery is now abolished. Everyone is an equal citizen under the government. The social casta is destroyed on the island. And essentially, what you have is the most revolutionary of all of these revolutions. Not only have they accomplished the political goals of the American Revolution, but for a large part of people, they've also accomplished the social goals of the French Revolution. So the Haitian Revolution is truly the most revolutionary of all of these revolutions. The Haitian Revolution is also very unique in terms of these revolutions for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, this is the first successful large scale slave rebellion kind of in human history. The last time we talked about a slave rebellion on this level was under the Romans with Spartacus. And even their rebellion did not have lasting effects because the Roman army eventually hunted down and killed Spartacus and his slave army. Um, but in Haiti, no such thing occurs. The French government threatens numerous times to send an army to the island, but all of their attempts to regain control of the colony fail. So, what this creates is the first non European state, the first African run state in the Americas. And it's the first non European state in the Americas since the destruction of the Inca Empire. And one of the other really important things to remember about the Haitian Revolution is that it is almost exclusively motivated by race and the racism inherent in American chattel slavery. And this is a case of the last become first and the first become last. The Grand Blancs are run off of the island. If they don't leave the island, they're, for the most part, put to death. And the former slave population of the island now becomes the power structure within Haiti. So this is a truly revolutionary revolution where the people who were at the bottom of the social, political, and economic ladder in the beginning of the revolution are now at the top. And this has widespread effects. It inspires other slave rebellions elsewhere in colonial America. There's a large Jamaican rebellion that happens about 20 years later. Um, the economic impact of this is felt pretty widespread because before the revolution, Saint Dominique was the top producer of sugar in the Americas. And after the revolution, after the plantations have been burned and that land has been redistributed for the most part, Haiti is now kind of a peasant farmer nation where people are working smaller pieces of land, farming, sustenance farming for their own food. So sugar production drops off dramatically. So this causes worldwide increases in the prices of sugar. An unfortunate side effect of that is that slavery in other sugar plantations, especially in Brazil, actually increases to meet that demand, which is a pretty terrible unintended consequence. One of the positive impacts of the Haitian Revolution, though, is this also boosts the validity of the abolition movement that has been building in the late 1700s, early 1800s. And it demonstrates to people that African slaves are not inhuman, they're not inferior, they should not be treated as property. They are capable of not only overthrowing one of the world's most powerful empires, but also establishing their own government along these Enlightenment ideas that are supposedly the natural way of things, and that they're capable of understanding and implementing those complex systems of government and complex social systems as well. Um, Now, this also causes backlash in other slave colonies as it becomes kind of a horror story for slave owners in the rest of the Americas. And it generates paranoia, it generates fear of lower class rebellion elsewhere in North, South, and Central America. And it's going to have a really big influence on how the Latin American revolutions that follow it play out.